Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-host, Jeff Mack, Newmark, Caleb Hoppus, Hanlon, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, and Matthew Naylor, Crumdale Partners. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown on who we have on the air today, please?
Sure, Herb. We have Trish Wellenbach, President and CEO of Please Touch Museum, Phil LaFata, President of Dunmore, Mike Regina, co-founder of Big Sky Enterprises, and Brendan Cawley, founder and CEO of Artisan Brands.
I'd like to introduce our first guest. Let's get to know our first guest, Trish Wellenbach, President and CEO of Please Touch Museum. Trish, what is Please Touch Museum? What are you guys doing?
We welcome children every day to discover the joy of learning through play, and our vision is a world where all children will be confident, creative, curious, and compassionate.
Wow, and you told us in the green room you're seeing about 500,000 kids a year. Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? Where are you in the pecking order?
Bergen County, New Jersey, Cresskill, oldest of 5 children.
And oldest of 5 kids. And what kind of stuff were you up to 8 to 14 years old? What's that list look like?
Well, I was tall as a little girl, and my mom had a lot of kids, and she was a suburban mom at home. And so I could make breakfast starting at about age 8. So breakfast and lunch for the kids every day. And big neighborhood community, suburban community of New York, bedroom community, lots of different families, probably about 40 kids in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And did your being the oldest of 5 help plant the seeds for your being the president and CEO of the Please Touch Museum?
Probably. I'm a good problem solver, and I take responsibility very seriously. Oldest children often do. And so I think my parents gave me a lot of responsibility, and I leaned in on it. I was often seen as like an old soul and a young child, people used to say about me.
Mm-hmm. What do you, Jeffrey?
Trish, tell us the effect that the neighborhood had on you, the 40 kids and people like Grandma Tessie Alessi. Tell us about how that affected you.
Yeah, these bedroom communities coming out of the Bronx and Brooklyn were all first-generational immigrants, Italians, Irish, Polish, German, and in many households it was multi-generational. That's what they did in New York. And grandmas lived with families, and Grandma Tessie Alessi, she had authority to discipline any child regardless of your last name. So if you were messing it up in the neighborhood while you were playing, she was in charge.
And what do you take to them? Yes.
I learned how to probably curse. I take that to work because it was a place of play and joy, no fences, no boundaries. You played every day with all kids, and we learned together.
David?
Trish, in the green room, you mentioned that you were babysitting when you were 12. What did you do differently than all the other kids that were babysitting?
It wasn't just babysitting for money. I was taking care of other parents' children. And so when I was there, I had to be like a parent and take care of them. And that meant if a kid got sick, it wasn't just, ignoring it, but cleaning up from it and getting everything ready for when the parents came home. And I think parents felt safe leaving their children with me. They knew how I was with my brothers and sisters.
So what does that have to do with what you do today?
I just think that when you invest in young children and supporting them socially, emotionally, intellectually, you build a generation of leaders to come.
Matthew?
So you're talking about taking care of all these kids, and you're the oldest of 5. I'm curious, how young were you when you were interested in creating interesting play environments for kids?
I was probably 8 or 9, setting up little schoolrooms in my house for my brothers and sisters or whoever else had to be around, or outside, again, no fences, big stickball games, riding bikes together. It's what we did. It was the 60s.
And when I asked you where you got the kind of skills to create those interesting environments, you pointed to your grandmother. Tell me about your grandma.
She had a massive influence in my life. She was a remarkable woman. I carry her with me to this day. And she gave me a sense of confidence, how she taught me how to iron, how to make my own clothes, how to balance my checkbook. She reinvented herself in her 40s after her husband died. And when she retired as the secretary to the chairman of a major corporation, they hosted her retirement party as a secretary at Windows on the World.
Trish, what if Grandmom was here today, if she's looking down on you and she sees what you're doing with the Please Touch Museum, how do you think she'd feel?
Oh, she'd be deeply proud. She was
Why?
a great giver to community. She actually used to volunteer in the foundling home in New York and feed babies whose mothers had abandoned them. And I think she always felt that kids were the biggest investment you could make in the
And
world.
that's what you're carrying that's what you're carrying with you today from her.
Every day.
Caleb.
So we're hearing Grandma Tessie Alessi was kind of the disciplinarian in the neighborhood. I get the sense in a Brooklyn neighborhood, there's a lot of other parents that have some leeway to discipline children. Tell us about the other parents in the neighborhood.
Yes, all suburban moms. You know, dads went to work every day, moms stayed at home, and they were in charge. And if you messed up in the neighborhood house 2 doors down, that mom could say, yo, get over here, and give you a little whack on the back of the head and say, behave, go home, time to have lunch. So everyone cared for everyone. It was this nurturing world, and I think it's what we've lost a little bit of today. Neighborhood and community is what helps children gain the confidence they need as they move into the world. Not just in classrooms, but in life.
Definitely getting the sense of accountability in the community. So I'm wondering, as the CEO and president of the Please Touch Museum, I'm sure you have a lot of employees. How do you take those lessons with how you interact with your employees throughout the day?
Every employee is personal to me, and it's not just the individual employee. They have a whole family and a community behind them, working through a pandemic, having to lay people off. Each individual, I have to respect them and honor them. And I am a very present, very front of house CEO. I'm out on the floor. I'll do any job I need to do. People need to see me working. If I work alongside them, they work better. I work better.
It sounds like that stuff you did with the babysitting where, you know, the child you were babysitting for got sick and you changed the sheets and you put him in it's like, you just like taking responsibility. Mr. Naylor?
Yeah, Trish, earlier you talked about Girl Scouts, and I'm just wondering, how did you get involved with Girl Scouts? Did your mom and dad force you to do that?
No, my grandmother said you should become a brownie, Trish, and I did. And I worked all the way up from being a brownie to a junior scout. And I was so proud. My first badge was my cooking badge, and my grandmother helped me. I was 10, and I cooked Sunday dinner for the entire family, soup to nuts, including the apple pie that I made, which to this day my brothers and sisters still talk about, so not so bad.
Trish, that's very interesting. What does that have to do with being the CEO today?
I think it's about accomplishing things and setting out a task for yourself and not being afraid to get out of your comfort zone. When you get out of your comfort zone, you find your true talents. If you're in your lane, that's easy. You can mail it. Get out of your comfort zone. Do stuff you're not qualified for. Take a leap and see what you can discover inside of yourself. It's pretty amazing.
Didn't you mention that you were well qualified for every single job you've had in your career?
No, Herb, my tagline is that I have never been qualified on paper for any job that I've gotten, including as the president and CEO of the Please Touch Museum, because I'm not a museum person. I'm not an educator. I'm a nurse-trained person. I don't have an MBA. I just lean in and do good work, and I always find opportunities to learn. If I'm not in a job that is teaching me something, I'm in the wrong job.
Jeffrey?
Trish, you've raised 2 children of your own. What have you learned from your 2 children?
Oh my goodness, everything. When I toasted my son a couple of years ago during the pandemic when they were living with us, I said, happy birthday to the child who taught me how to be a parent.
Wow.
Absolutely.
And at the Please Touch Museum, what's the headline? What's going on that the public would be interested to know?
Oh, big news. Our supermarket experience, the #1 children's exhibit space in the country, has been totally reimagined to an exhibit called Food and Family. 3,000 square feet of imagination play, the journey of food from the farm to the store, to the home table, to the neighborhood, and how that all connects. Joy, sadness. Food is what brings people together, and it's in food and gathering around a table that you bring families and communities together. And that's where all the good conversations happen. Think about it in everyone's home growing up. It's where it really happens.
You mentioned earlier that when you were a child, or somewhere along your life, somebody mentioned to you that you're like an old soul in a young body. What was that all about?
I think I was born with something in me that inspired me to reach and take on more responsibility. And you don't always see that in young kids. And I think I was about 24 or 25 when I felt like it had really finally connected.
When what finally connected?
Like my old soul and my body were like, okay, but it was all there. I was a gawky teenager, not very popular in school. And then all of a sudden I started to find myself.
What do you mean you started to find yourself?
I moved to Philadelphia when I was 21. I didn't know a soul, not a soul. It was the 1970s. No one elected to move to Philadelphia if they grew up in the suburbs of Manhattan and went to school in Boston, unless she had an Aunt Lucy living at 9th and Passyunk or something. I came here not knowing a soul, and 40 plus years later, I'm proud to be running one of the most remarkable children's museums in the country.
What's the website address of the Please Touch Museum?
PleaseTouchMuseum.org.
We've been speaking with Trish Wellenbach, President and CEO of Please Touch Museum, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't go anywhere. Stick around. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. This is Herb Cohen, your Executive Leaders Radio host. And the CEOs we've interviewed on this show are interested in helping you get your business started and helping you grow your business. Whether you're aware of the issues or whether you want the CEOs to give you a hand identifying the issues in getting your business started and or in growing your business, why don't you email us at consult@executiveleadersradio.com. That's consult@executiveleadersradio.com. Whether you're interested in having our CEOs speak with you regarding getting your business started or growing your business, send us an email at consult@executiveleadersradio.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you shortly with some help. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. I'd like to introduce Phil LaFata, president of Dunmore. Phil, what is Dunmore? What are you guys doing?
Dunmore, we make technical films easy. We are a manufacturer of films, fabrics, and foils for aerospace, tapes and labels, and other industrial applications.
How large or how small is the team? Where you're from, and how many brothers and sisters?
We've got 200 people across 3 factories, Philly, New York, and Germany. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm the oldest of 3 kids.
You're the oldest of 3 kids. And you also told us in the green room when we were getting to know you, the first family member to ever run this business. And we'll dig into that in a second. What kind of stuff were you up to 8 to 14 years old? What's the list look like?
I was active in sports and really active in school. I went to Catholic schools on the south side of Detroit and had lots of friends, lots of kids in the neighborhood, and, basketball camps in the summer, basketball all winter, and lots of fun and friends, lots of family.
All righty. And let's see. Caleb, give me a hand, please.
So, Phil, was basketball your number one sport?
Yes, it was. It was actually the only thing I was good at.
Did it come naturally to you?
Not at all. I sucked at it when I was I started playing when I was in 4th and 5th grade, and I was terrible. And it took me a long time to actually become a good, skilled basketball player and start to compete at a level that wasn't embarrassing.
So what did you do to get better?
I worked really hard, body, physically, my skills, but I sought coaching. I mean, I really sought out my coaches and other older kids in the community that would play with me and beat me up. And I did. I played a lot with my dad in the backyard, and he used to really go. He never took it easy on me. So he always pushed me hard, and I got a lot better.
Yeah, coachability is really important in life and in business. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that you're the first non-family member to be the president of Dunmore. So do you think your coachability kind of has the board of directors there a little more trustworthy in you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe that, from the owner of Steel Partners and my immediate supervisors there at Steel, they trusted me with this business because they wanted a change agent. They wanted somebody that would come in and help build up the business, not tear it down.
David?
You mentioned in the green room that your father was the janitor at your private school. Wasn't that embarrassing for you?
No, David, not at all. Actually, my dad's a really cool guy and a really smart guy. And he just happened to not have a very successful job. And so it was nice. I got a discount to go to school. And that was the reason why I was able to go to Catholic schools. And it was nice having my dad around. So I don't think at that point we realized that we were maybe lower class.
So how do you think that experience ties into what you do today?
Well, I mean, I'm in manufacturing, and so in manufacturing, we have a lot of labor, and the labor is the most important part of what we do. If it wasn't for the guys on our shop floor that were working hard and, really making the product, I wouldn't have a business. So it's extremely important that they're happy, that they're paid well, that they're safe, and that we've got a great community of labor and workers and a good relationship with them.
Jeffrey?
Phil, Dunmore is not your first rodeo. You've grown and multiple businesses. What have you learned from your prior entrepreneurial experience, and have you brought some of your team along with you to the new companies?
A great question. I absolutely, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm somebody who starts things and builds them up. I'm a growth and strategy guy. And that's what I learned is, you're going to knock your head into the wall a couple of times, but you got to keep trying and keep pushing and never quit. And be willing to admit you're wrong and change course. And so that's helped a lot at Dunmore. And absolutely, there's several people in the past that have brought in the business. One in particular was my former boss at Arlon, the business in California that I was running. And he's now running he's my director of sales and marketing, Gabe Maxwell. Been extremely successful and great to have him back.
And why does Dave Maxwell follow you? What does he see in you
So Gabe and I have been friends for a while after that, and I helped him a lot grow his part of the business, and it was fair to him and worked really hard and helped support him and, in one skill set. And I think him and I complement each other really well. What I'm good at, maybe he's not as strong, and what he's really strong at, I'm weak at. So we have a great complement on our team.
Matthew?
Phil, you spoke to us in the green room about the importance of going to Catholic school in your upbringing. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the discipline, the community, and the structure that Catholic schools provided helped me kind of see that, I could be something more than what I am today, what I was at the time as a child. And I always wanted to learn. I was curious, and it gave me the structure in a peaceful, safe environment to learn and focus on myself and development.
And you also talked a little bit about how you felt growing up in a Catholic school when you were excelling at something. Tell me about that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when you're a leader and you're at the top, people want to tear you down, and people are interested in seeing those who soar kind of hit the ground and come back to earth. And I never experienced that. In my school, kindergarten through 12th grade, I always had success in the community building each other up rather than tearing each other down.
How young were you when the community was building you up?
I started becoming kind of who I am today in 5th, 6th grade. And I'd say in 6th grade is really when I started to excel at sports, and when I started to really feel that support and that, attaboy, and that made me feel great and gave me a ton of confidence to keep going and keep persevering and keep trying to be way better than I am today and strive to be great.
So what do you do today to the people who you work with to build them up in the same way that community built you up in 6th grade?
You got to give them lots of time. You have to be willing as a CEO to give your time to the people that work with you and work for you and support them. And I always say, if you are willing to be open and honest with people, whether that's an easy conversation or a tough one, and help chart their course and impart some of the wisdom, you can't always help somebody, from maybe making a mistake, but you can allow them to make the mistake and learn from it. And I think that's extremely important as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Naylor?
Yeah, Phil, earlier you've spoken a lot about the neighborhood and sports and Catholic school. And there's something there about relationships that's unique to you. What impact has that had on you today?
Huge. I always had positive. My parents supported me. They were always there for me. My dad went to every single game. My mom was always there. And kind of my community, my brothers and sisters, my friends, they were always a positive influence because they never had anybody trying to tear us down. And so it allowed me to build relationships in a constructive manner and not worry about what I'm going to get out of a relationship or what I'm going to get out of a situation, but how both of us can win. And I know that sounds cliche, but I do truly believe that if you take if you look at things positively and optimistically and you try to help each other in a situation, you both can win.
So, Phil, what does that have to do with being a CEO and a leader?
Well, it's not always about yourself, and it shouldn't be. If you go around wearing your title on your forehead, I think you've lost, right? And you've got to be there. You've got to lead by example, and you got to be willing to do the difficult things that not everybody's willing to do. But you also have to be the one that cheers everybody and keeps everybody going when things are tough. And things aren't always easy. And if they were, there'd be a lot more people in our positions. And I think it's extremely important what I learned when I was a kid, to bridge those gaps in relationships through thick or thin. You stick with people, you stay loyal, and you keep on going in that direction.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yeah, so let's apply this specifically. You joined this company that had been a 50-year-old family-run company. How did you actually persuade the family that they could trust you to build it up and not tear it down?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we still have Paul Sullivan, Vince Sullivan, Joe Sullivan, Daniel Englum, who are still family members in hugely important positions in the business. And, I came in as a total outsider and from the parent company, right? The corporate parent. And I bridged the gap on the relationships because I put myself in their shoes and tried to figure out exactly what they do and what impacts them and what's important to them. And I also wanted to find out what was the soul of Dunmore. Why are we important? And they were willing to work with me.
So what's the website address of Dunmore?
Dunmore.com.
We've been speaking with Phil LaFata, president of Dunmore. Back in a moment, right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. I'd like to introduce Mike Regina, co-founder of Big Sky Enterprises. Mike, what is Big Sky Enterprises?
We are construction managers and design builders specializing in churches, healthcare, and retail.
And how large or how small is the team where you're from, and how many brothers and sisters?
We are a team of 10 and one brother.
All righty. You're older or younger?
Older.
You're the older brother. And I understand when you were about 5, mom and dad got divorced. Tell me more about that. What was going on?
Yeah, that was the first time, obviously coming home and experiencing, not having both parents at home, when I came back from school or dinner time. So it was just a new way of living life. So it was definitely a different experience for me.
Sounds to me like you adapted pretty well. I mean, as opposed to a shocker and blowing you off your feet and becoming a victim, sounds like you just kept on rocking and rolling.
Absolutely. You know what? We have to adapt in life just in general. And especially as kids, I think kids typically have a pretty good ability to be able to adapt.
Mr. Naylor.
Like earlier, you told us you spent a lot of time in the summer with your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. My parents were divorced and, during the school year, stayed with my mom, but in the summers with my dad. And it was just great for me because I was down the shore. So I was able to surf multiple times a day, morning, noon, and night. So I was able to experience the beautiful life down at the beach.
And you also, I think, told us you had a summer job too.
Absolutely. My first job was actually I had my own business. I had a car wash and detail center at my dad's 2 office buildings throughout high school. So that was my first taste of the entrepreneurial experience.
And I think I also heard earlier before you said your dad was pretty disciplined.
Yeah, my parents were both disciplinarians, but my dad very much so. He was from the city. So, came from, a tough background, and he instilled that into us, which I'm very grateful for today.
And what does that have to do with you today as a leader?
I just think discipline in general is really a requirement if you are going to be a leader. It just helps you stay organized, focused, and also more productive.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Jakowitz.
Mike, you mentioned in the green room you mentioned that your mom was very special to you and you kind of had a special relationship. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, my mom was just an incredible woman. She was just a great supporter of me. She never, nothing was ever an issue. She drove hours and hours, to all of my games and practices. And not once did I ever feel like I was a burden.
So how do you think that ties into you running the company today?
I just have to be able to be understanding, compassionate towards others, and just know that, everyone is in a different place, and to just respect and just give it all, whatever it is, to each person and relationship within the company.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
Mike, you're in a tough business, especially today in construction. Where'd you get that toughness to be able to operate in an environment that you do?
Sure. Growing up in the construction business, my dad was a developer and a builder, and also had a concrete company when I just graduated high school. So that was my first real taste in the construction business in concrete. And, he took me from a boy to a man in 2 hours, from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. the first day I did it.
So you work for your dad?
Absolutely.
In the labor capacity. So did you have to work harder than the other guys?
Always. You know what? I'm going to work harder no matter what. But yes, especially when you're working for your father, everyone's sitting there looking at you. How is the boss going to treat his son? And I can tell you right now that my dad said he didn't care. He's going to treat us harder.
You mentioned you picked something up about concrete and running a business. What's the connection between concrete and running a business?
I think concrete is a business that every person should get into. And the reason why for that is because, one, it is physically demanding. But number two, you only get one chance to finish concrete. You can't go back the next day and finish it. You got one shot. And it's just like that in business.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood. Matthew?
I'm curious, did your brother do the same jobs with your father too? It's a younger brother, right?
Yes, actually he did. And you know what? I have to give him credit. He did pretty good as well.
And tell me, when you were watching him go through those same experiences that you had presumably gone through 3 years before, right? It's 3 years, I think. What did that feel like for you? And what did that do for your relationship with your brother?
At that point, my brother and I, we still had that brother relationship. We really hadn't really matured, even though I might have been in college that day. And but it was, it was still good to see him. I mean, look, we had to get stuff done, and our dad was one of those like, hey guys, we need to get concrete done. Let's go. We had to do what we had to do.
So I think you told us in the green room, there was a point where you and your brother kind of shifted over to being best friends. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually the last time that my brother and I actually had a real actual physical fight was a question that was asked at a restaurant when my mom's boyfriend at the time said, who has better grades? 2 minutes later, we're actually out in the parking lot into a fist fight, came back in, blood all over us, shirts all ripped. I went home that night, cried for 3 hours. By the grace of God, 2 years later, my brother and I are best friends, and it hasn't changed since.
And do you still ever get a chance to work together or anything like that?
We do. We have multiple companies together, and there is not one person other than him that I'd rather do business with.
Wait, you're saying he's your partner?
Partner, everything, best friend, you name it. He's my boy.
Caleb?
Hey, Mike, let's go back to being a surfer growing up. What does that mean? You roll out of bed at 11 or noon, surf all day, party all night?
I wish that was the case, but really being the first child, I kind of paved the way for my parents on how to raise a kid. So I grew up with a little bit more discipline than my brother did. And honestly, I wasn't one of those guys that enjoyed being in trouble. I just wanted to enjoy the things of life and be able to go out and surf. So not really, but in terms of the surf lifestyle, I felt like I had a pretty good experience.
How do you stay disciplined now?
Well, you know what? It's all about discipline. I'm one of those very regimented people. I'm up at 2:30 to 3 a.m. every morning. First thing I do is quiet time, and then I go to the gym, and then I'm in the office.
Do you think that helps you set your day, run your business a little more efficiently?
100%. Look, I'm one of those believers that you have to take care of yourself first in order to give more of it.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Jackowitz?
You mentioned this close-knit friendships you had and this reliability on your friends. How does that tie into you running the business today?
Everything is about relationships. I speak on it professionally. We can't do anything without relationships. Phil talked about it earlier. We're as good as the people that we have around us. So relationships is everything, whether it be business, people that are working in your company or your clients.
Wait a minute. So when you get up in the morning, what's the goal?
Crush the day.
What's that look like? What's that mean?
All in, going 100 miles an hour and, doing everything that you can to make sure, Trish talked about, earlier about putting out fires. It's all about, being a problem solver, but I also have a tendency to be a problem starter. So it depends.
So you're coming up with ideas.
Oh, always. You know what? I'm more of a visionary, high level, like a dashboard type view. I'm not one of those ones that, enjoys being in the weeds. I like directing and leading from that perspective.
So if you're an idea guy, why are relationships so important to you?
Listen, relationships are great because that allows you to go into any different business that you want with a foot in the door, because it offers the opportunity for introductions and things of that nature.
Well,
Mike, how young were you when you were aware of yourself bringing discipline to order?
I just think, just at a young age, I don't know if I necessarily know the exact age that I was, but I just always enjoyed sports, competitiveness, and being so busy, you had no choice but to be disciplined in terms of your schedule.
Where did that come from? That need to be disciplined and busy?
I think it's just like the will to win. I just, enjoy it. And in order to do it, you're either practicing or you're playing.
And you have 3 kids, right? How old are they?
19, 18, and 11.
And I'm curious, that need for discipline and competition and all, what did you learn about that part of yourself from having 3 kids and watching them go through it?
You know what? It's interesting. I think one of the hardest things as a parent is that your kids are different than you are. And you have to really understand that each one needs to be raised and coached differently. It's not one size fits all. That is probably one of the biggest challenges that I've been in my life, is being a parent.
And I understand you're the co-founder of Big Sky Enterprises at home. Who runs the show at home?
My wife. You know what? I've been so blessed and fortunate to have an amazing wife who's been home and helped. Obviously, I mean, she's my partner. In the business. She might not be at the business, but she's a partner in the business because, she took care of the kids on a daily basis. And that is a huge commitment. Anyone that is hyper-focused on being a stay-at-home mom, I'll tell you what, they got the hardest job in the world, in my opinion.
What's the website address for Big Sky Enterprises?
BigSkyLLC.com.
We've been speaking with Mike Regina, co-founder of Big Sky Enterprises. Back in a moment, right after this quick break. This is Herb Cohen, your host at ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Regarding your career, if you're trying to figure out how to make the most money and also enjoy your career, really enjoy your career and make the most money, you ought to talk to our CEOs. They've got the bird's eye view of where the really profitable jobs are, where the really profitable jobs are going to be, and they're willing to speak with you regarding their vision for the future and where you may fit into it in order to make the most money and really enjoy your career. Email us, consult@executiveleadersradio.com. That's consult@executiveleadersradio.com to get help from our CEOs regarding where you may want to go in your career to make the most money and really enjoy your career. Consult@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Brendan Cawley, founder and CEO of RTZN Brands. Brendan, what is RTZN Brands? What are you guys doing?
We create and distribute premium snack food brands around the country, primarily Righteous Felon Craft Jerky.
Mm-hmm. Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? And where are you in the pecking order?
From Downingtown, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. I have 2 brothers. One's younger and one is older.
So you're the middle of 3. And 8 to 14, what was the list of stuff you were up to as a kid?
Just tons of sports around the neighborhood and in organized sports, playing soccer, baseball, hockey, and basketball.
You mentioned you also did something with guitar and fishing in the green room.
That's right. Yeah, I had a lot of diverse interests, but music and playing guitar and doing some outdoor stuff with fishing and Cub Scouts were all, part of the mix.
And how young were you when you started making money, and what did you do different than all the other kids?
First job was actually just outside the neighborhood up at farm/nursery that was, like I said, outside, close to our neighborhood, and doing anything that had to be done on the farm that day, whether it was watering the crops, cleaning out the chicken coops, driving the truck around, moving things around, cleaning up places, whatever had to be done that day.
So your willingness and your ability to do a wide variety of things at the age of 13, and the owners of that farm that hired you had to give you the responsibility. Evidently, you were capable of taking it. What's that have to do with your role as founder and CEO of Artisan Brands?
Yeah, I'd say everything. We don't have a ton of resources at the company, so it's a bootstrap business, and that means that each person has a wide scope of responsibility and a wide skill set. And that's one of the things that differentiates us from a lot of the competition.
Gotcha. Jeffrey.
Brendan, you bought your first dehydrator at age 12, and you were working with your friends in middle school, creating a product. Tell us about those relationships. Are they long-lasting relationships? Are you friends with them today, and are any of them in the business with you?
Absolutely. So I've been blessed with awesome people around me my entire life, starting with my family, and then even the friendships I made in through sports and in middle school. And those 4 or 5 guys who I was very close with in middle school are still my best friends today, and they were helped me launch the company and help drive it to where it is today. And a few of them have even joined in the last 2 years as full-time employees here to help keep up and drive the growth. So it's been awesome to keep in touch with them, both personally and professionally.
Matthew?
Yeah, Jeff just had in his question there that you bought a dehydrator at 12, but I'm a little bit confused by that. First of all, where'd you get the money to buy a dehydrator at 12? And second of all, why would you buy a dehydrator?
Yes, I was a strange kid with some strange hobbies, but I did have I had an uncle out in Pittsburgh who worked at the steel mills. He had his own little jerky hustle where he was making 10 or 20 pounds a week in his basement and selling it to his coworkers at the steel mill. I was visiting one time and kind of caught wind of it and helped him out with a batch or two, and was just, blown away by the process and the magic of, raw beef transforming into this dried shelf-stable snack as a kid. And as soon as I got home, I think I had a birthday around the corner or Christmas, and collected some birthday money and went and spent it on a Denny dehydrator at Kmart.
So I'm curious, when you're watching your uncle doing that, were you fascinated by the scientific process, or was it that you thought the result was delicious, or did you already think you were going to be able to make money on it? Like, what was it?
Definitely not the scientific process. I was 12, but it was that magic experience where this thing just, went into this box as one thing and it came out as something completely different. And I think that's what really stuck with me. And then just the ability to experiment on top of that. Like, once you have that base recipe and know-how, you can go anywhere with the flavor profiles and the branding. And if you check out Righteous Felon, that's exactly what we do.
And how young were you when you realized there was actually a money-making opportunity there?
Well, we did start to sell it in our middle school. That's a little bit of the backstory of Righteous Felon. We got in trouble for that first take of the business. We didn't revisit it until 15 or 20 years later. And that's when we really launched it and realized just the potential of the industry, the size of the industry, and how we could kind of differentiate and find our niche in it.
Excellent questioning. David?
You mentioned you playing basketball when you were younger and that you were the point guard on the team. What does being the point guard in basketball have to do with your running the business today?
Sure. Yeah. Well, a point guard is, kind of runs the show, is the floor general, and not just responsible for knowing, your own game plan, but the game plan of all your teammates, as well as the other team and the plays they're running, the defenses they're playing. And that, I don't know if there's any better analogy for what you do as a leader of a business.
Caleb?
Is just assessing the competition and finding finding the weak points and going after it.
And then I heard this long list of things that you did to keep busy when you were a kid, sports, and you also mentioned you were a guitar player. Where did you find the time to fit in guitar lessons?
I didn't take guitar lessons. I just got a guitar and got some chord books, I believe, and just started figuring out, how it worked. And we didn't have YouTube yet, so I don't remember exactly how I learned, but it was just a lot of trial and error and, figuring things out.
So you're a self-taught guitar player. You're figuring things out with a dehydrator. Would you say you're kind of like a tinkerer growing up?
Tinker is how most people describe me. Sometimes not favorably either. Maybe I over tinker.
So how did that help you grow the business?
Well, I think business is all about trial and error and testing, A/B testing and optimizing. And, that's essentially what tinkering is at the end of the day is trying different things, measuring them and comparing them to the other options that are on the table. And that's, tinkering 101.
Mr. Naylor?
Brendan, earlier you're speaking about the neighborhood and friendships and relationships, and just interesting to me. How do those friendships and relationships impact you today?
Yeah, I'm lucky to say that the folks I grew up with, including my two brothers, are both all partners in the company. Maybe the company is the reason we've stayed together for so long, but they're just guys that, I have two biological brothers and several other brothers, and just can't imagine running the business or being where I'm at today without those guys. It's, it's everything I have in my life.
And Brendan, how does it make you be a better leader and a better CEO?
I think it's, guys that have known you your whole life have to hold you more accountable than I think employees would. And so, there's a lot of trust there both ways. And it makes sure that we are executing and holding up kind of the promises that we've made to each other when we started the company, every day as we grow and kind of hit these new heights as a growing company.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go back to when you're in middle school?
Absolutely.
And you're playing around with this dehydrator. Where'd you get the products to make your first batch?
My mom. My mom would take me to BJ's and we would buy, try to get the cheapest prices on soy sauce and beef. And I remember dropping maybe $80 or $90 and thinking that was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And it's funny to think about, those ingredient costs today, given, where our volumes are at today.
So, and I'm curious, were you already thinking about what your margins were going to be and whether you were going to make that 90 back, or it didn't matter at the time?
Didn't matter. I didn't really figure out the whole margin equation until I was working in finance after graduation. And that's really where the passion for beef jerky and the know-how of manufacturing finance kind of came together and the light bulb went off.
And so your mom just kind of supported the tinkering and let you run wild with it?
Yeah, my mom she's an all-star, and she's supported me throughout, everything in my life, and has distilled a lot of the hardworking and, never complain type attitude that I think defines our company.
Caleb?
Brendan, you started making this beef jerky recipe when you're a kid, and now you're having pretty explosive growth out there. What's your revenue like, or how have you been growing over the past couple of years?
Yeah, we're doing about 12 million a year right now. The year prior to last year was 4.5 million. We had plans to hit close to 20 this year. So each year we're kind of raising the bar and challenging ourselves to keep up with this 100% growth year over year, which obviously gets more difficult.
Brendan, what's the website address for our artisan brands?
RTZNbrands.com and righteousfelon.com.
Excellent. We've been speaking with Brendan Cawley, founder and CEO of Artisan Brands. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown of who else we've had on the air today, please?
What a great show, Herb. We had Trish Wellenbach, president and CEO of Please Touch Museum, Phil LaFata, president of Dunmore, Mike Regina, co-founder of Big Sky Enterprises, and Brendan Cawley, founder and CEO of Artisan Brands.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack, Newmark, Caleb Hoppus, Hanlon, David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, Matthew Shapiro Obermeyer, and Matthew Naylor, Crumdale Partners, for giving me a hand structuring the questions. Hope you're providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.